Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. I'm your host, John Bush. Today, we have a wonderful program lined up for you. We're going to be joined by Brianne Bernsen of Plum Fabulous Foods. She's our resident gardening expert that we've collaborated with quite a bit in the past here on the program, and a lot of the local stuff we're doing in Central Texas. She was featured in the Excellent Build Land Summit, the very first farm tour we ever did. And I think that was November 2021. And we've been collaborating with her ever since. She's an excellent teacher and homeschool mom and all around great gal. And her and the great Melanie Rubin of Parallel Times are hosting a webinar this weekend. We will get you the links there to join. It's Saturday, the 28th at 10 a.m. Central. So definitely want to check that out. We're going to be talking about prepping and planning and getting started on your spring garden, all things gardening, balancing life and parenting and all that comes with that. And I hope that you guys will leave feeling informed, inspired, and empowered to take responsibility for your food provision and to stay free. So stick around. We're so glad that you're joining us today. All right, let's bring Brianne to the stage. How are you there, Miss Brianne?
Hey, John. How are you?
Good. What's new in your life?
Well, things are busy. We had our first two children leave home, fly the nest. Yeah, so that's been very life-changing. But yeah, everyone's getting bigger and older, and time marches on.
Time marches on. Indeed it does. And it never stops marching. Tell me again, how many kids do you have? It's quite the pack.
We have 6, and they range in age from 9 to 21.
Now, you homeschool, so what did the whole 6-7 thing reach your little crew there?
It did, and we tried to squash that as fast as possible because it's annoying.
I found the best way to squash it was to do it, and then it becomes lame because the parents are doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that meme just went so crazy viral that parents started hopping on, and then the kids
no one was immune from it, for sure.
That's not cool anymore, Dad. No. It's still cool when I do it, though. I still work it in here and there, and the parents watching some of my videos like, oh, we know what that is. So just share a little bit about your life, because I guess you had 6 kids in the house not too long ago. Now it's down to 4. But in spite of all of that, you still managed to create quite the bountiful garden. Maybe you could share what that's like. And I just want folks that are watching along. People always come up with excuses not to do this or that or not to get going. I got the kids, I got work, I got these stressors, I'm helping my parents or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, oftentimes those are just excuses for not taking action. Maybe we feel uncomfortable learning new things, or the last time we tried to plant some food, it just was a total flop. But you got to keep at it. I'm sure you've made your fair share of mistakes. Yeah. So what's life like there at the Bernsen homestead?
Yeah, so it's always really busy here. It's always been really busy. We've had 6 children since we moved to Plum 15 years ago.
Plum, Texas.
And that's when we lived in town in LaGrange, and we had a small garden there, and we just really wanted to expand in chickens. We wanted to expand the garden. We needed more room. We needed more chores for our kids to do. There wasn't enough to do in town to keep their little hands busy. And so moving to Plum was such a great decision. We only have 2 acres here, but we've really maxed out our use of the space in incredible ways. So we built the garden. We built it small in the beginning, and then we just kept adding to it every year. We kept doubling the size until we got to the current size, which is about 32 feet by 110. So it's when you do the math, it's like 0.07 of an acre. So it's still pretty small. But we've consistently grown between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds of food a year. We also have 150 meat birds that we raise a year. Some years we do more like 250 meat birds. It just depends on which children are interested in making some money by raising pastured poultry. We also have layer hens, we have turkeys, and we have sheep. So you can do so much in a small space. And I'm very thankful to have been able to raise my children in this environment, because they all understand where their food comes from. They all understand the difference between a weed and a carrot sprout coming up. They can identify plants out in the garden. They've learned animal husbandry in amazing ways. And two of my children currently now work at a raw milk dairy and have really expanded their knowledge of animal husbandry. But all of my children appreciate good food. They're kind of food snobs. They're kind of vegetable snobs. They don't like eating stuff from the store because they've been raised on the food that we grow, and it really just tastes different. They've also been incredibly healthy. So what you save in growing an organic garden, you definitely save in doctor bills. So we don't have to go to the doctor. In fact, it's been probably over a decade since my kids have been to the doctor. I've got some kids that were born at home that have never been to the doctor. And so,
Yeah. What about the wellness check?
yeah, I figured if I had 6 kids, like I could tell if a child was well or not. And so far they've been well. So
we don't need to know the percentile of how big their head is or whatever.
I mean, you can actually look those things up online, but what are you going to do with a child that has a big head? I mean, God bless them. That's what they're born with. So I don't know. And we've been very lucky, and I know that, but we don't have any allergies. We don't have, we just don't have a lot of the problems that are kind of common with a lot of children. And I'm very thankful for that. And I know a big part of that was the environment that we raised them in. And so you were talking about people like to make excuses. I didn't know anything about gardening. I went to the library and got a book and taught myself, because that's what adults used to do when they wanted to learn something before we had the internet. And so the first book I got happened to be an organic gardening book, thank goodness. And that's how I got started. And I've since then kind of become a student of gardening. I really enjoy doing side-by-side analysis, testing theories, seeing what works. And we've kind of built a system over the last 15 years of merging a lot of different gardening philosophies, primarily square foot gardening and back to Eden gardening, and adapting them to working in Texas. Because a lot of gardening books are meant for the north, where they have hard freezes. And we have a whole different ball game here in Texas. One, because we have year-round growing capabilities, and two, because we have grass. And we have grass like people in the north can't even imagine what Bermuda grass is like. And so those two factors really needed a garden system that was designed with those things in mind. And so we did farmers markets for years because we grow so much. We grow more than our family can eat. I went from farmers markets to I had a commercial buyer who had his own CSA but didn't grow enough to support it. And so we helped him with his CSA for a year or two. And then now we primarily eat our food ourselves. We do a lot of homestead type activities with canning and putting food up that way. But then we also donate everything we have now to the food pantry that's extra above what we need. So the food pantry here in LaGrange is well stocked with fresh vegetables every week.
Awesome. And kudos to you for not sending the kiddos to the doctor. And who would have thought, just allowing God's beautiful design and this amazing human body that we have, just allowing it to do its thing, would avoid all sorts of problems and struggles and calamities and friction. So the more that we can align with just the natural order of things, the better. And when it comes to gardening, it's a great opportunity to get in alignment with the seasons. Mm-hmm. That's something I've always struggled with because, my story's shifting. I have a 10-acre homestead that we're now selling, unfortunately. We had quite a bit of food production out there. Now I'm in the city in downtown Bastrop, which is still pretty rural, but I got my 20 containers in the back that I'm excited to plant to get going again. But the more we spend indoors, the more we spend slaves to the clock, which isn't very natural. The clock, hourly time, 60 seconds, 60 minutes, the less in tune we are with nature and the cycles and the natural ebb and flow. So growing your own food and animal husbandry really puts you in tune with that natural order, which is a whole nother, like more of a spiritual, philosophical angle besides just food production and staying healthy. You kind of change into a different rhythm, which humanity's gotten away from.
Yeah. And we've eaten. So one of our biggest focuses over all these years is how can we do the least amount of time and effort to get the maximum amount of benefits? Because we've homeschooled since the beginning. So I've got 4 kids that have been through college or are in college now, and 2 that are still in primary grades. And so we've been heavily homeschooling the entirety of our time out here. And we are small business owners. So my husband and I are both licensed land surveyors, and we have a business that we've had for 23 years. And so we're just busy. And so I've always looked for ways to make things more efficient. And one of the earliest things I learned was it's a lot of work to put food up. And so I used to grow all the broccoli that we needed, and then I would put all of it up in the freezer for a whole year's worth of eating, and then we would sell the rest. And then I learned, like, because that's so time intensive, I learned that it's actually just really easier to eat seasonally. And we've been doing that for so long that I sometimes forget to like explain that that's part of our system because we're so used to it. But my kids know that you don't eat cantaloupe in the winter and you don't eat salads in summer because that stuff doesn't grow. And I would actually much prefer to eat peppers for 3 months straight, or tomatoes for every meal, or squash every meal for a couple months than I would take that time to put stuff up. And when you get in the habit of eating seasonally, you have those periods of abstinence from food that makes you happy to have them again. So like everybody knows how you can get burnt out on food. And let me tell you, I have burnt out my kids on eggs because we've had eggs forever here. And but when you take periods of breaks from eating something, then you don't get burnt out on it, and you look forward to it when it comes. You get so excited. Everybody is so excited now for that first cucumber that's going to be here in a month or two. And so it just gives you a different appreciation for food. We're so used to here in America having things at our fingertips whenever we want it. And we're spoiled, and we take things for granted, and we don't even know it. And it's really interesting when you're in the farmers market world, you learn so much about American eating habits. And people are so spoiled in this country. And so if you grow anything that's like slightly different, like most vegetables actually have a purple variety. Green beans come in purple, cauliflower comes in purple, carrots come in purple. If you bring something purple to the farmer's market, it's not going to sell because people don't know what to do with that. Even though it may be better for you because it's higher in phytonutrients that you can't get in any other color vegetable, that's out there. And so it's just very interesting. There's also, we've learned lots of parts of vegetables that people discard, and they're totally edible. And if you go anywhere else in the world, people eat them. But in America, we throw them away like they're trash. So there's just been lots of interesting things that we've learned since growing our own food. And we have just a different appreciation for the seasonality of things and the plant in its entirety.
Yeah, it's a great approach to life in general when you go at things with a level of consciousness and intent, and you're a student throughout it all. In Buddhism, it's called beginner's mind, where you're just kind of in awe of things. And there's always so many lessons to learn besides how to make when is something ripe, or how to combat pests naturally. Just like with entrepreneurship or child rearing or growing a garden, there's all these deeper lessons that you can tap into. And I'm totally with you. Americans are, my good friend River, him and Amani do Haven Village, and they work their butts off. And boy, oh boy, the first time I visited in July last year, I didn't know they had that much food production going on. I'd just seen some Instagram reels and stuff just highlighting it. But you get there and you're like, wow, how are they pulling all of this off? I guess they have it takes a village, a Haven Village. But River's from the UK, and he's always been into architecture and building. And whenever he picked me up from the Atlanta airport in July when I visited, he's like, these Americans, they're just so damn entitled, and all they do is complain about everything, and they want everything spoon fed to them. And he was really ripping on Americans, and I totally see where he's coming from. So just really want to encourage people to get out there, get your hands dirty, and don't be afraid to fail. Let me share with folks. This is the webinar. If you guys want to sign up, it's going down live February 28th. That's this Saturday at 10 a.m. Central. I dropped the link there in the chat, and you can also find it in the show notes. This will be hosted by Melanie Rubin's Parallel Times University. She's a good friend of the program and a good friend of the work that we do at Live Free Academy. And she has been collaborating with Brianne to bring forward this information. They also have a really awesome course. They're going to be inviting you guys to dive deeper, but you can join the webinar. It's absolutely free, and it's going to be focused on seedlings. And again, 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard, 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern. You can sign up for free. It's on a Zoom webinar. So let's talk about doing seed starters or seedlings versus planting straight for seed in the soil. Which do you prefer? What do we need to consider? Are some things better to do sowing the seed directly, or is everything better to do the seed starters? What's that all about?
Yeah, so it's very nuanced, actually. It just depends on the plant, and it depends on the time of year. So the things that are better direct seeded in the garden are corn, green beans, carrots. That's probably about it. So those things, if you were to start them inside, they don't transplant well. And so you're better to just start them out in the garden.
And did you learn that from a book or from experience, or both?
I think from a book.
Okay.
But I've trialed everything. I love taking what they say in the book and going out and trying it. And so there's a lot of like gardening
putting meat in the compost. I know you're a fan of that.
Sure. Yeah. There's so many gardening rules that I've read, and I'm like, but why? And then I'll do them and I'm like, oh, but they work just fine. Companion planting, or don't put these things next to these other things. Look, I've tried everything, and I can just tell you that the majority of that stuff you can throw out the window. Same thing with, like you mentioned, the compost. When I first got into composting, and I've spent hours and hours taking classes on composting, all sorts of information. They said you can't put bones or meat or grease in your compost, and that's baloney. I saw Joel Salatin put an entire cow in a compost bin once and cover it with mulch, and I figured if he could do that, then when I butcher chickens and I have the O-fowls left over, I can put them in my compost. And sure enough, I can. In 6 weeks, they're gone. So there's just a lot of rules out there. And sometimes, you mentioned earlier, people will kind of talk themselves out of doing gardening. If you get so stuck on the rules, or, oh, I don't know if I can plant this next to this other thing, or there's all these things I have to be concerned of, and I don't have a grasp of that knowledge, and I can't do this. It's baloney. You just go out there and you put some seeds in the ground, and they're going to work or they're not. And if they don't, seeds are cheap. So
let me ask you on that front, though. Should we follow the rules, though, when it comes to planting a certain plant for the season? Because some things won't grow. So that there are some like critical rules, but for the most part, you can experiment at the very least.
Absolutely. And so we did have a free webinar 2 weeks ago I think it was 2 weeks ago. That's still available. That I don't know if Melanie can share the link, or somebody can share the link somehow. But we talked about garden planning, and we very carefully laid out those important rules. You have to you start out with making your plan of what you want to grow. Then you have to figure out what growing conditions are ideal for them. Some things like to grow in cooler climates, and some things really like the heat. And you have to keep those things in mind. That you can't change. Okay. You can't. Somebody asked me yesterday, they heard that you can grow tomatoes year round here in Texas. That's not true. It gets too cold in the wintertime. But so we did explain in there how you want to calculate those planting dates and those seeding dates. And then the webinar we're going to have this Saturday, we're going to talk about how to actually start seedlings and stuff. So I would encourage you, if you are brand new to gardening, to go back and to watch that first class, because it really helps lay out those parameters that you should stay within. I will say, however, too, and even if you can't watch that webinar, there's planting guides all over the place. There's probably a resource in your county right now that says when you should plant things based on what it is. But I will say, everybody has a specific microclimate wherever they're at. And even if you have a chart for your location, for your county, that says this is when we need to grow tomato plants, or this is when we need to plant our bean sprouts, those are suggestions. And I've seen wide varieties of your ability to plant stuff in my own location compared to somebody like a mile or two from me, based on wind conditions, light conditions. We're at a slightly lower elevation, so things are kind of cooler here. So you can take planting guides as a suggestion, but then you need to feel free to tweak those dates. And change them. When I was in the farmer's market world, it was always about whoever got your stuff to market first. So you wanted to be the first person with squash at the market because people are eating seasonally there and they want something new. And so we were always pushing the dates on growing stuff. So I encourage you to stick to general guidelines on those. But again, feel free to like experiment. And then you want to take those dates and really fine tune them for your specific microclimate. But let's go back to your question. You were asking about what's better to seed directly and what's better to transplant. In general, besides those specific crops I mentioned that need to be planted directly in your garden, it's generally best to start transplants when you can, because you give those baby plants the ideal growing conditions and the ability to observe them as they're growing and to meet their water needs and their light needs and to protect them from wind, which is actually one of the most devastating things to baby plants is wind. And you're able to give them the perfect little environment and then transfer them out to the garden. And when you do that, you have a higher success rate. So if we were to just direct plant seeds, everything from seed out in our garden, you may not have as high of a germination rate. You may have 50% of plants survive versus 95% if you're using transplants that are already well established with good root systems. So we want to start everything from seed that we can. So I will say also, onions need to be started out in the garden. And when you buy those, they're called sets. You buy the little baby onion plants from wherever you get your plants. You can start onions from seeds. It's a little bit trickier. I wouldn't encourage most people to do that in the beginning. Maybe graduate to that step. Potatoes are also something that you don't really start from a transplant. You have to start with seed potatoes. And sweet potatoes are also something that you have to make what's called slips. So you ever seen where they cut the sweet potato in half and they put it in a jar and they grow the little vines? And actually you break those off and you plant that vine in the ground. So those are some plants that have a little bit of caveat to them. But when you're starting baby transplants, super easy. You just need soil, a good growing soil. I prefer like a potting soil or something that's intended for starting seeds because it's got to be well draining. You need little containers to put your soil in. And I've seen people recommend all kinds of crazy stuff like eggshells or egg cartons or toilet paper tubes or those sorts of things. I applaud your ability to want to recycle, but when you're growing baby plants, what you're really looking for is a volume of soil. And you really aren't going to have enough soil in half of an eggshell. Although you can plant that whole thing in the ground, it's going to give your plant some micronutrients like calcium that's going to be beneficial. It's not really going to be enough soil volume to get the plant growth that you want. So keep that in mind when you're trying to find containers to put your baby plants in.
We did coconut core at, I forget where we got them from, but we had to buy them. And there were these little coconut husk, small things. And we were like, this is great. It'll just, it'll biodegrade into the soil and the roots will penetrate through and it's nice and natural. So we created this elaborate setup with all these trays and then put them on these shelves on the side of the barn and planted them all. And we're so proud of ourselves. We put seeds in all of them. And then we put them in the ground when they were starting to sprout up and none of them took. And then the ones that were starting to take, I don't think that the roots were strong enough to penetrate through this thick coconut husk. But then a wild boar must have came and rooted everything up anyway. So you are talking about fences. So it was a disaster, but we didn't give up. We continued on. Right. And it was just it was a bummer. It's par for the course. You kind of got to expect that and anticipate it so you don't get so disillusioned.
Sure. And I'll just say, like, it took me 3 years before I could grow corn. I had so many failures. And so a lot of this, and that's why we're passionate about educating people in gardening now, because we spent 15 years making all kinds of mistakes. We wasted our time, our energy, and our money. And we're just trying to save other people from making those same mistakes because we've tried them all, some of them intentionally, to see how bad of a mistake is this? How much is it going to cost us? And so we've learned a lot of things, and that's why we like to share with others. But I think generally, whatever soil you use, you want it to be something that you can pop out of the container and it can go in the ground and start growing. And so when we see a lot of these things, sometimes simpler is better. You know, just buying a simple bag of soil and filling the little containers is easier in the long run than trying to find little gadgets or like the pucks that you were talking about that maybe under different conditions they would do better. But I think for the most part, as much as we can mimic nature, the better. And we like a very simple system. We like a closed loop system as much as possible. We don't rely on fertilizer. We make our own soil from mulch and compost. We keep our own seeds because we grow all heirloom crops. We have a closed loop gardening system that doesn't rely on Home Depot or Lowe's to support us in any way. So as close as that as you can keep, the better.
Excellent.
So when we're talking about seeds, I mentioned heirloom crops, and those are ones that are true to type. They're older seeds that haven't been hybridized or genetically modified in any way. And so when you take seeds from those plants and plant them, they reproduce just like the parents. And I highly recommend those. If you have a hard time finding heirloom seeds, or you think you have to go to some fancy website and buy expensive seeds, I'll just tell you a gardening hack. If you go to the dollar store and find seeds, they're all heirlooms. And the reason they're there is, and they can sell them for 25 cents a seed packet, is because they're not patented. And they're not patented because they're not genetically modified or hybridized. So, and I've bought heirloom seeds for years. And I was at the dollar store one day and I was like, these are the same varieties I grow. And then I started thinking about it and researching it. And sure enough, if you find cheap seeds, they're heirloom seeds. And so you're better off buying those than any of the burpee seeds or some of those expensive ones. So,
what about organic seeds? Is that a thing, or it becomes organic when you don't put chemicals on it? Or what's the difference between organic and heirloom, really?
So organic seeds is reflective of their growing condition, not the variety of plants. Okay, so heirloom seeds are the variety of plants that have the seeds themselves have not been altered. The genetics of the plant have not been altered. Whether that same seed is heirloom or not heirloom just has to do with the growing conditions of that parent plant. So if that heirloom plant,
organic or not organic,
right? I'm sorry, I don't know what I said, but whether that plant was grown in organic conditions, which there are criteria that you have to meet in order to be certified organic. So you can't have certain inputs in your garden. It has to be so many years since conventional methods were used. All sorts of crazy things that if you wanted to be certified organic, you can be sure and meet. And if you do those things, then you can label your stuff as organic. But I'm not really as concerned about making sure that my seeds are organic as I am making sure I grow my stuff organically. So if I start with a seed that's not labeled organic, I don't really care. I'm going to grow that stuff organically. The growing conditions of that parent plant probably aren't going to have a giant impact on its seeds. It would be a bigger factor if they were hybridized or if they were genetically modified. And you can't buy organic genetically modified stuff because those two things are incompatible. You can buy organically grown hybridized plants because hybridization is something that can even happen in nature. It's where you have one parent plant and a different variety of another plant, and they cross-pollinate, and their offspring is considered hybridized. Sometimes they do that intentionally when they're trying to adapt certain varieties or certain disease resistant or certain growing conditions or qualities that they really like. They will specifically breed plants for that, but it often happens in nature. And in fact, it'll happen in your own garden if you plant things together, too close together, that cross-pollinate naturally. So things in the squash family, for instance, often will cross-pollinate. So I remember one year we had cantaloupe growing too close to pumpkins. They're both in the squash family, and they indeed cross-pollinated, and we grew this thing that we called a pumpkin. It was like a cantaloupe and a pumpkin, and when you cut it open, it was terrible. You couldn't tell if it tasted like a cantaloupe or a pumpkin. It was a strange-looking plant, but so those things happen naturally in nature. So don't be scared of something that's hybridized, but just know that you're not going to be able to save seeds from that. So you'll often find like hybridized pepper plants, hybridized tomato plants too, and you can grow those, but you can't save seeds from them.
Excellent. Okay, I want to take a moment just real quick to thank one of the sponsors of our show here on the Live Free Now show. we're always excited and grateful for the support of Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. They actually have a subscription program that lets you purchase a set amount. It could be as low as $35 a month, $50 a month. I do the $125 a month Warrior Wolf. Let me show you what that is. You can go to livefree.academy/wolfpack. livefree.academy/wolfpack will take you there. And essentially you just purchase a monthly subscription and they send you regular little shipments once a month of precious metals. I just got one recently. It came with a silver ounce here, a Walking Liberty silver ounce. These tend to be a little bit more valuable than the spot price. It came with this little 1/10 of an ounce round. And then it came with a couple silver dimes, a $50 and a silver quarter, 1964 and before. But I gave those to my brother-in-law for his birthday. So I don't have them here to show you, but it also included 2 gold backs. These are worth like $10 a piece. So the cool thing is it's a set it and forget it way to get precious metals. And it also does dollar cost averaging. So you may know that silver was like $125 an ounce just a month ago or so. And then maybe about 6 to 8 months ago, it was $60, $50, whatever the price. So if you're purchasing once a month at the same time, over time, your cost basis averages out and you get a nice, and it's likely that the price of silver is going to continue to go up. So you're not buying when it's super high, only to feel frustrated a couple weeks later when it goes from 120 to 80. You're just buying at regular intervals as a wealth play. That's awesome. But also, more importantly, in my opinion, what they'll send you for the most part is little tradable units. So we're talking about gardening. I took some precious metals, a pocket full of silver, up to a Mennonite farmer's market in Tennessee not too long ago and asked them if I could pay for our vegetables with silver, and they were all excited about it. So I bought $52 worth of vegetables with precious metals. They don't accept credit cards there, so it was a natural fit. But one thing, if you're aiming to grow the counter economy where we could trade outside the system without some CBDC digital currency centralized nonsense, which is coming down the pike, you can participate in growing the counter economy by bringing some precious metals to the farmers market vendors and just going from stall to stall asking, hey, are you guys willing to accept precious metals? I got some burning a hole in my pocket. I'd love to purchase some veggies from you. If so, yeah, check it out. livefree.academy/wolfpack. They're freedom people that run the company too. They supported the last land summit. They're sponsors of the program and good friends of ours. livefree.academy/wolfpack, and you can set up your subscription today. All righty. Let's go ahead and bring Brianne back onto the program. I'm sure. What are we doing here? Wait a second. Wait. There we are. Okay. I'm sure if somebody walked up to you asking to buy some veggies with silver, you'd probably say yes, huh? I don't.
Yeah, you bet. We're also really big fans of bartering. We do a lot of bartering. And I always tell people to like do what you love. Like you don't have to be the guy that does everything. So we've never had bees here because we've got 2 acres and 6 kids, and they're always outside. And so you don't have to be the person that does everything. And I know a lot of times when people want to get into the homesteading lifestyle, they think that they have to do all the things, and you don't. Do the things that you love. And so we grow chickens because we don't have land for cows. And we barter for beef. We barter bread for raw milk, and find those people that are doing their thing and make friends with them and figure out how you can work together.
Yeah, and a farmer's market is a great spot, not only to network with people that are customers going, but farmer's market vendors and people that are in the thick of it. Oftentimes they're like-minded, especially the further out in the country. Maybe not as much if you're in one of the Barton Creek Square Mall farmers markets, but lots of good people there, lots of community to be built. So super cool, super cool. So why don't you share maybe some of the hard-learned lessons that you've gained over the years? Have you ever had your entire crop wiped out, or how's winter treated you, or what? You got something I could tell. You're laughing.
I do, and I'm scared to share it because it's so embarrassing. I think my husband and I made a vow to never share this again. But I don't know if you recall the Fukushima when they had the nuclear fallout there. So we had heard these fears, and this was when we first moved here. And so we were brand new to gardening on a large scale like we were doing. we heard these fears of these acid rain clouds coming that were going to rain down nuclear waste on the garden. And we had, I guess we were probably like year 2 or 3 to hear. We were so worried about it getting into our soil because the soil is so precious to us. So we had our garden fully planted and it was growing, and we wanted to protect it from this possible acid rain. And so we went and got plastic sheeting and covered the whole garden in it, and we were going to protect it. And I didn't know that that was going to smother and kill everything that we had growing at the time. And so we literally completely smothered and killed everything we had growing with these tarps in the with the best intentions. And we just had no idea. I didn't know that if you put clear plastic on top of plants in the middle of Texas heat, that it would absolutely burn them alive.
Oh yeah.
And so so that was a fun learning moment that we always laugh about.
You manifested the very thing that you were trying to avoid.
I know. But I to be honest, if we had the acid rain like they had talked about, I would have sacrificed those plants to protect my soil, with the plastic sheeting. So, but thankfully neither one of those things happened, and we were able to regrow, because that's what happens when you have situations like that and something doesn't work. If you get a boar that comes in there and tears everything up, you just grow again. I mean, and especially here in Texas, because we can grow year round, you just, regroup and get out there and plant some more. Seeds are cheap. So
yeah, and it's just a trip how there's always these big like scares, and we're all in our little freedom, conspiracy movement. We always think the bottom's going to drop out, and we're like programmed to just, it always spreads too on social media, and all these calamities are going to happen. And 99 times out of 100, it doesn't pan out that way. And I've been in the game for a while with the conspiracy stuff, and everybody has these big, it's happening on September 22nd, and the Iran World War III, and China's going to nuke us, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm kind of desensitized to it, but I hope it's not like a boy who cried wolf scenario where I'm like, oh, great, there's another post circulating around, and then it happens. And I'm like, oh, it's always good to be prepared. And it's all lessons. It's lessons to learn.
Sure. And at the end of the day, like, you just got to focus on the comfort you have in knowing that you can grow your own food.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't go to the grocery store for the entire month of January because we were just living on the stuff that we had. And I would encourage you too, like, if you do get into gardening and homesteading, it's not just about growing the plants. Everybody wants to talk about growing the plants. Well, what are you going to do when you got 50 pounds of squash a week? The other half of gardening is knowing what to do with all that stuff, especially if you're coming at it from like a homesteading point of view. There are certain crops that lend themselves to being put up. That's what we call, putting vegetables up for a future use of time. And so certain things can be put up and certain things don't do well. Like, you can't freeze or can lettuce, just you either eat it or you don't. But there are other things that really lend themselves to a homesteading lifestyle. So I would encourage you, if that's your goal, to really focus on those sorts of crops. And so lots of root crops can be canned. Lots of summer stuff can be frozen and preserved well. You can't can squash; it turns into mush, but you can freeze it. And so it's very important to learn all these different things about the plants that you're growing. Learn the ways that you can preserve them for the future, so that when these terrible events happen, you are well stocked with your own homegrown food.
Yeah. And I've learned that knowing when to harvest and then what to do with the bountiful food is half the battle. And so it took us about 3 years, just as you shared, to really start being able to produce the fruit. And then unfortunately, my soon-to-be ex-wife and I had separated, and she was usually the one that would take the veggies and cook them. And so I was really leaning into the ranch work and the garden, and it became more fruitful than ever, ironically, when I was the one managing the entire 10-acre homestead, which I always get a trip out of. But then there was just so much food, and I don't cook all the time. So I was like, well, what the heck am I supposed to do now? So we gave it away, and finally got a ton of watermelons to grow. That was awesome. We popped out like 13 huge, super sweet watermelons. So I was giving some away to family and stuff. But there's a lot of elements. And then I always tell people, I think there's some people that think they got the survivor seed bank in the closet.
Mm.
And if crap hits the fan, oh, I'll just start gardening then. But as you well know, it's quite the learning curve. And so much of the value is showing yourself, proving to yourself that you can take something from seed to fruit, which is not the easiest thing by any means. It's far easier to raise chickens, to butcher, and for eggs, in my opinion, than it is to go from seed to fruit, especially with some certain plants. So why the heck not? Here, I put this link up. I grabbed this image earlier. I think the lesson above all other lessons is just do it. Just get out there and do it. Don't want to nod to big sweat labor corporation Nike, but they did have a pretty damn good slogan there. Just do it. And if you want some direction and guidance, you don't have to go it alone. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Brianne Bernsen here on the Live Free Now show, and her and the great Melanie Rubin of Parallel Times are going to be hosting a free webinar this Saturday, February 28th at 10 a.m. Central. It's absolutely free. There's absolutely no reason to join. If you can't make it live, they'll drop the replay for you as well. Plus, it'll welcome you into the world of Parallel Times with the great Melanie Rubin, so you can be in touch with her and all the cool stuff she's doing. She's quite the homesteader and freedom person, and really focuses on parallel economy and just all sorts of parallel networks. But of course, growing food is a key piece of it. And her and Brianne have been collaborating for a while now to help folks learn how to grow food. And as you can tell, Brianne is an absolute joy. She's a great teacher, and it's very practical and down-to-earth kind of stuff. We're not getting all nitty-gritty, technical, scientific. It's not about growing some giant yield and you're going to be working the farm 6 hours a day. Not in the least bit. She really focuses heavily on keeping things simple. And kind of when we went to visit your place, you know, I need to dial this in there. That's the button. When we went to visit your place, it reminded me also of when I went to go visit Jack Spirko, and, you know, Spirko survival podcasts. Everything's going to be so perfect and polished. That's just what you expect. He spends so much time and he teaches all this stuff, and you go there and you're like, this is a pretty scrappy setup, but man, he's cranking food out, you know?
Yeah.
So your thing's just like put it in the ground, plant it. This works. This didn't work. Go, go, go. Put a new section over here. Let's make this happen. And that's what it's all about. Just doing it and getting your hands dirty and not being afraid to make mistakes. I think that just holds people back so much, our own insecurities. And I don't want to feel foolish for not being able to make it work again. But that's what happens. Not even unfortunately, fortunately, because that's how we learn.
Sure. And we really like to kind of lean into permaculture in our garden. And so everybody wants these like Southern home and gardens, beautiful, everything's perfect. It's not like that in reality. In fact,
most people pay for that, by the way. They hire somebody to build that.
Right. If you want that, that's a full-time job. And we've shared before, I've done the math. It takes us on average 4 hours a week between picking and planting.
Wow.
It's 4 hours total a week of garden work year round to produce what we do. But in doing that, we lean very heavily on permaculture type techniques. And so we don't keep things as clean as what maybe we would like if we were on the cover of a magazine. But when you don't pull things out the moment they die, or when you don't constantly keep things pruned and beautiful, you allow stuff in the soil to remain that can germinate at a later time. And so we actually get all kinds of volunteer crops that come up. For instance, cowpeas. We don't really harvest cowpeas. I'm not a huge black-eyed pea fan, but they grow really well in the garden, and they put nitrogen into your soil. And so they come up wild. I've actually already seen them in my garden now. Here it's like February. They've already been coming up in our garden, and they come up all over the place. And we don't even harvest them. We just allow them to grow for that nitrogen. They provide shade for other plants. And so if you can kind of lean into the permaculture mindset of this is not an entire bed of just this, and this is an entire bed of just this, and we've got these clean cut, beautiful rows, and everything's perfect all the time. But if you let things kind of get wild at the end of the season, there's a lot of benefits that come from that.
Excellent. And we're looking for folks that are tuned in here on the video. We're looking at pictures of the growth. This is how it started, huh?
How it all started. Yep.
Wow. And you can actually crank a decent amount of food just from those, what, 4, 6 beds there?
Sure. And so we've done the math over the years, and what we've discovered on a consistent basis, if you follow our methods, is that you will produce about 1 pound of food per total square foot of garden space. So that includes the walkway. So for instance, this first garden that you saw, that was 32 feet by 32 feet. And of course, you can see half of it is walkways and half of it's bed. But when you do the math, I can't remember what 32 by 32 is off the top of my head. It's like 900. But we were producing, yeah, it's 1,024. We were producing 1,000 pounds of food from that garden in the first
Wow.
year. So it's not a pound per foot of growing space. It's a pound per total enclosed garden space. So
Wow.
yeah,
Look
so
at
it
that.
helps you to do the math, because we also encourage people to build a garden that you can manage. This is like
Mhm,
having kids. Like, nobody has 6 kids to start with. You'd be completely overwhelmed. You have
mhm.
one child at a time, and then you learn and adapt your skills to be able to have more in the future. And the garden is the same way. So we encourage people to start small and then add to it over time.
Excellent. Yeah, so start small, just start. Just
Yeah.
Gabriel said, we said just do it. He said just grow it.
Yeah.
So wow, looks like you figured out the corn just
Yeah,
fine.
we do. In fact, you mentioned earlier not waiting until the stuff hits the fan to get that seed bank out. I just want to say a couple things about seed banks. One, seeds expire. Even though they're packed in Mylar bags with the oxygen absorbers and all those sorts of things, some seeds, like corn, only has a 1 year shelf life. So keep that in mind.
Mm,
Two, a lot of those varieties are not meant for your area. If you live in Texas with high humidity, a lot of the stuff that's packed in there may be for the north. It may not work for you. Okay. And three, you don't wait until the stuff hits the fan to figure out how to grow stuff, because some of it, like I said, it took us 3 years to figure out how to grow corn. Um, we grow corn. This is the variety of corn we grow called Painted Mountain, and you can eat it like sweet corn if you pick it in the milk stage, or you can leave it on the plants to dry and grind it into flour. I know I can go to the store and buy a bag of organic cornmeal for $5, right? But we go through the process of growing corn, of harvesting the corn, of taking the corn off the husk and drying it and nixtamalizing it and then making masa out of it. We go through that process every year to preserve those skills. Okay, I'm not doing it to save money. I'm doing it so that we can remember how to do it, so that if we needed to rely on our corn for all of our flour production, we could. So,
was there like let's talk about the money that goes into something like this. For most folks, when you're just getting started, it ends up costing a bit more to grow food than it would be to just go to the grocery
sure.
store. But it sounds like you got in a groove where you're saving quite a bit of
Oh,
money.
yeah, for sure.
How
Yeah.
long did that take for it to become a net profit or whatever? You don't have to put money in, so to speak. You're actually saving
Yeah.
money.
We always joke about that $500 tomato, right? We've
Yeah.
all heard about all those inputs. So we designed, when we moved here, we're a single income family with 8 mouths to feed. It's cost has always been something that's been at the forefront of my mind. And so when we started teaching people about gardening, that was a consideration we always kept in mind. So when we teach people how to build soil, we tell them you can either pay with your money, you can buy a bunch of stuff, you can pay with your labor by doing a bunch of manual sifting of material, or you can pay with time by buying a bunch of mulch and compost and letting it sit for a long time. So if you don't have the money, you can pay with your time or you can pay with your labor. And we encourage people. You saw in our early gardens, we had the sides on all of our beds. For one thing, we're a huge raised bed gardening method philosophy. Okay. We don't plant in our native soil. We have terrible soil here. Lots of people have terrible soil. If you want to try to amend your natural soil, they say it takes so many years of adding all these inputs. That's too long to wait. Right.
Mhm.
So we always encourage people to make your own soil. And putting those sides on all your beds, that's an extra cost. Okay, that was like half the cost. When we first built our garden, it was something like $1,000 for that little 32 by 32 foot garden that we built.
Mhm.
When we
Fencing
added,
is expensive too.
yeah, when we doubled it the next time, we took the sides off the beds and we just raised the whole thing. And we used a mixture of mulch and compost. And it was something like $500 for that second part. Then when we doubled that, So we went from 32 to 64 in the second expansion. It was started 32 by 32. 32 by 64 was the next one. And then we doubled that whole thing. So we added a whole nother 64-foot section for $300. And we did that by just using straight mulch and then letting it sit for a year. So there's different things that you can do to make things cheaper. And then again, like I said, we keep our own seeds. So we're not buying seeds every year. We do buy winter crop seeds because it's very hard to like get a seed out of a carrot. You ever seen a carrot seed? Yeah, but I mean, where on a carrot does the seed grow? Ah, yes, nobody knows. Actually,
No
actually, you have to leave a carrot in the ground for 2 years, and then it flowers and stuff. And so, there's certain crops that are very easy to get seeds from. You crack open a watermelon, there's all kinds of seeds right there. So we really encourage people that are getting into seed starting, start with your summer crops, cantaloupes and watermelons and cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers. Those are easy to find the seeds. Winter crops like cabbages and broccoli and cauliflower are a little bit harder. Onions, it's a little bit harder to get seeds from those things. So you can keep your own seeds, you can make your own soil, and you make your own compost. And once you start doing all those things, man, you're saving lots of money. We have a family of 8. You know, we were now recently a family of 6, but that's only been the last 2 months. And with a family of 8, our average grocery bill for like the last 5 years has been less than $500 a month. And that's toilet paper and coffee and my husband's Bluebell ice cream addiction. And so all the things that we can't grow ourselves. And $500 a month for a family of 8 is great. And so that savings is coming from the food that we're growing ourselves.
Rock and roll. Okay, guys, if you're just joining us, you're tuned in to the Live Free Now show. I'm your host, John Bush, and every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central, we bring you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use. Live free, prosperous, and healthy life. I do want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button on this video to help boost us in the algorithm. I'm not one of those guys that's like, our channel's being shadow banned. I'm just like, we need to create the best content we can and even play to the algorithm. But most important, in order to spread this great word about freedom and preparedness and living your best life, you guys can subscribe and hit the like button. Subscribe, hit the like button. There's no better time to do it than right now. You know, the best time to plant a tree, 20 years ago, the next best time now. Same thing. The best time to subscribe, maybe 2 years ago, the next best time right now in this very moment. And of course, today we've been joined by the one and only Brianne Bernsen. Her and Melanie Rubin are hosting a free webinar coming up this Saturday. The webinar is this Saturday, February 28th at 10 a.m. Central. You can register absolutely for free. You know, I tell you what, we teach a lot of stuff here on the Live Free Now show and my company, Live Free Academy, about exit and build and opting out of the beast system and set up your wallet and maybe even set up a common law, non-statutory trust and a private membership association and opt out of the beast tax system and all this stuff. And some people may be like, whoa, John, that sounds a little bit much. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I totally get it. I understand you should just dive in anyway, but there's absolutely no reason. I can't think of one reason why everybody that's watching this transmission right now is not growing food. There's no reason not to. No matter if you live in an apartment, no matter if you got a small backyard, like my backyard's pretty small, but I got the 20 containers there I'm going to be planting. Or if you got acreage, of course, that's a huge benefit as well. But we got some folks here in Central Texas, here in Bastrop County, actually, the great Lynette and the wonderful Belinda, and they live in an apartment and they have one of those small little backyards that's like to let your small dog out. And I tell you what, they're cranking food out and they're collaborating with each other and they're swapping stories and they're coming to our bi-weekly little meetup. You should come, by the way, Brianne. Every other Thursday, we're hanging out at Community Gardens, Casa Chapala, the Casa Chapala Fiesta and Grill. We'd love to have you there to talk shop, because gardening is always a conversation. Maybe we could pick your brain a little bit, but they're there and they got a small apartment and they're growing a bunch of food. And they're not, they're learning trial and error as we all do. But my point is, there's no reason not to. Get out of your own way, my friends. I know the excuses may be springing up. Maybe they're not. Maybe you're ready to go and fired up. So there's no better time than now. And if you want some support in getting started, register for the webinar today. Jumpstart your garden with Seedling Starts. The link is there in the show notes. It's live again, February 28th at 10 a.m. Central. Brianne is a wealth of knowledge, both book smarts and hands in the dirt smarts as well. And so you can avoid some of the mistakes along the way that she has made by joining this webinar and joining Melanie Rubin's Parallel Times University. Okay, we got less than 10 minutes left. Let's hit some questions. I invited folks to drop in and ask any questions. So we have one here from the great Gabriel Dominguez. Can freezing extend the life of seeds?
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely recommend. Some gardeners will say it's best to keep it in the fridge. I've always kept mine in the freezer, and it's always worked. So again, you know, there's lots of things that they tell you that you should do, and I'm not saying that those things don't work. I'm just saying that I don't know that it's worth the effort. Like, I don't have fridge space. We have one fridge for the family of 8 that we have. And so I don't have room in my fridge for all my seeds. And I like to keep seeds. I like to try new things. So I have quite a seed collection, and I have the freezer space. So that's where I keep mine. Yeah. So
Okay.
I do want to say, John, you were talking about like getting started and encouraging people with small spaces to jump in. I just can't tell you how good a tomato tastes that you grow yourself. And it's not necessarily because the tomato itself tastes different. There's something cathartic about growing your own food. Man was made to grow his own food, and it's the most gratifying thing you'll ever do. So I appreciate your plug for helping people to get over their preconceived notions and their excuses. And I just want to tell you that it's written on man's heart to grow his own food, and you can't put a price on it.
Yes, and tomatoes are great. I love tomatoes,
Yeah.
especially the heirloom tomatoes and the big, just juicy, plump ones. They're so
Yeah.
dang good. I just like to slice them up, put some salt and pepper, and just go to town. And then we were able to grow just so many cherry tomatoes. That was one of the crops I couldn't keep up with. But it's just nice walking through the garden and just bloop, as a little snack, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe fighting off some of the bugs that were coming to eat the tomatoes. There was a bit of competition, but nonetheless, yeah, guys, there's no reason not to. And Gabriel's asking, so every other Thursday, the next one's coming up March 5th, we are hanging out at Casa Chapala Fiesta and Grill. Now, there's 2 Casa Chapala restaurants in Bastrop. One of them's on Highway 95 next to Buc-ee's. This is the one that's at Community Gardens, which is a great spot. Actually, I think they kind of pulled a lot of their stuff for the winter. I sure hope that they're bringing it back. It's quite the eclectic spot there, that Community Gardens. But they do have a Mexican restaurant on site. There's drinks. The first time there was 3 of us, including me. Next time, 2 weeks ago or a week ago, there were 7 of us. So it's growing and growing, and we'd love to have you guys out there. You can expect us to be there. I'll try to be there for every single one, but even if I'm not able to make it, I'm hoping the momentum keeps going every other Thursday. This is part of my effort to serve our community here in Central Texas and do all I can to help us build community, because relationships are the most important piece out of this entire thing. And you don't have to go it alone. Brianne is here to help give you a leg up and to teach you. And Melanie and Brianne have collaborated. So there's a free webinar coming up. And then during the webinar, they'll invite you to join this course that they put together, which is like super comprehensive and thorough, but very, very beginner, basic stuff anyone can pick up and start implementing. Because again, the important thing, guys, I know people like to watch the shows and the webinars and share the articles and all that stuff, but that's not going to get us very far. It's a piece of the pie. It's a piece of the puzzle, but the most important thing that we can be doing is taking action. And then when you grow that tomato, when you make a salad, even if it's just a salad, maybe it's not the sides with your main entree, but it's just a salad. Salads are relatively easy to grow every element. Cucumbers are pretty easy. Lettuce is really damn easy, and tomatoes are damn easy here in Central Texas as well. But you prepare yourself a nice little salad that you grew with your own effort. And I tell you what, it's a big confidence booster that'll spill over into all areas of life. Gabriel's got another question here. Thanks for your participation there, Mr. Dominguez. What's the secret to bringing back lime trees? I'm hoping I didn't lose mine. Will it self-bloom? Do you do a lot of fruit trees over there?
We do. And so you have to be careful with citrus trees. Like if you've lost the main stalk or the main branches, it is probably gone. We lost a lot of citrus back when we had the winter storm Uri a couple years ago. And here's what you have to be worried about. Most citrus trees are grafted onto a different rootstock, and so if it's coming up, if there's shoots coming up from the ground, you may not know whether it's coming from that rootstock or whether it's the lime plant itself that's coming up. And so yes, they will start growing again depending on the establishment of the root system, but you just may not know whether it's the plant that you want, whether it's your actual limes.
Okay.
So,
all right, we're at time. Thank you so much, Brianne.
Real quick, John. You were talking about hands in the dirt. I just want to encourage anybody, if you're learning about gardening from somebody, please make sure they have dirty hands. There's a lot of people that go out there and they teach and they're experts on gardening, but they haven't gardened in years and years and years. And I can assure you, you can ask Belinda and I still get my hands in the dirt. I'm in the garden every day. And so this is still something we're actually doing. And anybody you pick to learn from, make sure that they're actually walking the walk.
That is what it's all about. Okay. And Brianne's definitely walking the walk. So we appreciate you coming on the show.
All right. Thanks.
All right. See you on Saturday. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Brianne Bernsen of Plum Fabulous Foods. And as I've shared multiple times during the program, her and Melanie are hosting a webinar this Saturday, February 28th at 10 a.m. Central. You can register absolutely for free with the link down in the show notes. I hope you'll check it out. That will bring you into the world of Melanie, Rubin, and Parallel Times University and all the cool stuff they have going on over there. We're extremely grateful to know such amazing women, amazing freedom people doing amazing things, and we hope that you will join us in the community. If you want to follow my work, you can join our free daily email newsletter at livefree.academy/newsletter, livefree.academy/newsletter. Once again, shout out to the sponsor of the show today, Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. They do the Wolf Pack. It's a monthly subscription program where you can purchase the same amount of precious metals, dollar cost averaging, every single month. I got myself set up on a Warrior Wolf pack, and it's tradable precious metals. You can go to livefree.academy/wolfpack, livefree.academy/wolfpack. They help to make this program possible. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel, subscribe to the channel and like this transmission so we can stay in touch and we can continue to exit and build together. That's right, my friends, here on Live Free Now show, where every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central, we'll be bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. Until next time, stay free out there, my friends. Goodbye.